Hello, church. It's so good to be back with you after a couple of weeks away. And I just want to extend my gratitude to both Jen Elms and to Ryan Beavers for the great job they did with the Philippians passage as we began chapter 4. Both of them are exceptional teachers and people of God and people I trust. I also want to just give a shout out to Janice Shepard and the amazing sermon that she had yesterday. And if you have not caught that, I encourage you to go to our webpage and go to our YouTube page, Georgianna Church, and give it a listen. So here we are. We're close to the finish line of Philippians, and we find ourselves in a passage that oftentimes is one of those things that gets hijacked and put on Pinterest or put on coffee mugs, or it just feels real pithy, but it gets taken out of context. So let me just share the two verses with you today. It says this, finally. So Paul is telling us we're getting to the end. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. So I want to share with you that as we think about unpacking this passage, that one of the consistent themes throughout Scripture is that everything begins with a thought. All your desires are nurtured, not from your heart, but from your head. It all begins with a thought, and all thoughts then become directional in nature. They lead us, they guide us. Any success you ever had began with a thought. Any failure that you generally ever had also began with a thought. And so a lot of times I will counsel people, listen, don't let your mind defeat you before your heart has found feet and gotten into the game. That's a great word. Do not let your mind defeat you before your heart has found feet and got you into the game. And so this part of what Paul is saying here, he's talking about integrity. He's talking about character. He's talking about whatever is pure, whatever is noble, whatever is right. Makes me think about Proverbs 23, which says, for as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. You know, I'm reminded that Paul later in Corinthians tells us to take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. You know, almost all of our sin begins with the thought process that then becomes desires. I want to share just a quick comment that was made by Frank Outlaw, and it says this, watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. And watch your character because it becomes your destiny. Listen, everything begins with our thought process. So in recovery ministry, any of you who've ever gone through that, and some people in our church have, will tell you that one of the tenets, one of the things they tell you is that you've got to abandon stinking thinking, right? That you've got to get rid of any stinking thinking as it relates to who you are, what your identity is, what your potential is, and to put those thoughts away. Again, as Paul says, take them captive. I want to share a passage from James that I think is not only supportive, but helpful. It comes out of James chapter 1, beginning in verse 13. He says this, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away. Wow, think about that imagery. Tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. I mean, part of what James is saying is that all of this process that leads to sin begins in our head. It begins in our mind. And we've got to be mindful of the fact that our thoughts have power and that our thoughts lead us. It is why we want to have a pure heart, that we filter things through Jesus, because it will infect our mind, right? So here's what I want to say. Right at the very end, he makes a profound comment. He says, whatever you've learned, whatever you have received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice. Part of what Paul is trying to tell us is, listen, you want to be a person of character and integrity, then you have to put it into practice. I believe Sunday is everything that propels us to application Monday through Saturday. Part of being in church, part of being in community is not only accountability, it is not only for our growth, but it is a catalyst for Monday through Saturday. It is to provide application. It is to put into practice. You know, Jesus tells us in the Sermon on the Mount, Anyone who hears the word of mine and doesn't put it into practice is like a man who builds his house on the sand and it crumbles. Again, your thoughts lead to what? Our practices. And so Paul's just reminding us, listen, you want to be a person of character and integrity? Then put these things into practice. Be noble, right? Be of high character. And then he says, here's the reward. You do that, and then there will be a peace that comes upon you that you cannot explain. And I don't know any of us who don't need peace these days. In this chaotic, crazy, divisive world, we all need peace. Paul says there's a way to get it, but it begins in your head and then driven by your heart, right? So let the God of your heart drive the thoughts in your mind towards goodness and holiness in Jesus. I hope this is helpful to you. I probably will share with us next week what we will be studying after Philippians, because we literally can see the finish line. I love you, church, and I look forward to being back with you again next Monday. Again, thanks to Ryan and Jen for helping out the last couple of weeks. See you soon.